I shared this shoot live with my IG subscriber group, but this is going to be a 3-part series where I show you how I would use strobes to create this kind of editorial lighting style. Then I go into a constant light setup that I played around with some shadows and highlights with. And then finally, there's going to be a mix between strobe and constant light in the same image to create more of like a dragged shutter effect. So let's start off with the easiest of the 3 setups. All right, so as you can see, I have my reverse octa that's flying above. This is the light motive. I have my 12 by that's flying directly over the top of my seamless paper. So the stack is basically the 12 by is in between the model and the reverse octa that's overhead. So my subject is essentially going to be here, right? This light right here is going through the 12 by and basically being diffused so that by the time it comes all the way down here to hit the talent that's going to be sitting back here, it'll light the background and it'll also light the model. And as you can already see, I don't know if you guessed it already, but you can also see this foam core that's sitting right here. I'm going to have my model basically sitting down in this area so that it seems like she's kind of sitting at a table or a desk or something. And by it being white, what's going to happen is that light that's coming from above will bounce down, and then obviously it'll do some type of return to go back up into our model's face. And that's really it. I'm using a Pro Pack because with this amount of power, this is 2400 watt seconds, it'll allow me to kick out enough light that'll essentially go through my reverse octa, fill that up so that it can spread widely enough to be able to fill out my 12 by that is throwing light to the background and then also throwing light to my subject that'll end up being here. So this is another angle, so you can kind of see that the 12 by, I didn't put the front baffle on it, the reverse octa, I didn't put the front baffle on it. So the light is basically going to still spread out over the entire thing, and then you'll have the 12 by that's going to essentially illuminate it. I put it slightly out in front of my talent or in front of the model so that the light kind of comes at an angle like this. I didn't want it to be too, I guess, like top down. The scrim essentially is going to catch the light that's up here that goes, and it's still going to illuminate the background. But primarily my goal was to make sure that I'm still catching my subject's face, right? And as it goes further back, I mean, you can even see how some of that kind of gathers down here, but ultimately I wanted to get in front of her so that I can get a little bit more return into her body and into her face. All right, so the other thing that I didn't mention in the primary setup was that I wanted to be able to bounce between photo and video. So you're going to see this light right here. This is a constant light. This is technically a light for video. Obviously, you can use lighting for whatever you want. And you'll see further along that I ended up using this for stills as well. But I set this up primarily so that I could bounce between photo and video. So even on my rolling Titan stand, you'll see I have my R5 on this side. And then I'm going to have, if I can't even tell in this picture, but right here, I'll have my R5C. So I'll have my R5 ready for photo, and then I'll be able to just literally slide my Titan stand over and go straight into the R5C doing video if I didn't have like the R5C already pointing at her to give me some kind of behind the scenes, if you will. So this is what it looked like on the video side. So I shot this with the R5C. The goal was for it to have the same feeling and overall setting as the stills did of this setup. And here's an example of one of the pictures from this setup. I really love this image because I love how the light still had some structure to it, right? Like it still looked like it was coming from overhead, which it was. But because of that foam core being below, it allowed some of that shadow that should have been a lot deeper and darker because it was so top heavy to be filled in by some of the return. That's it. In part number 2, I'll show you how I went from this setup to now using this setup where this is all constant light, no strobes. And it's a mix between that light that I showed you before and a little something extra. Check it out.